So, Morgan, if you start off, who are you?
Why are we doing introductions? Seriously, there's no fucking use for this.
Fine, don't even bother then. Hello, Spec Gamer.
Wow, that was quite a jump.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
know.
the only one who's going to...
Well, why not? We don't know you. Nobody here knows you apart from me.
Okay, hi. I'm Alex, also known as...
Did he just drop?
He just cut out.
I was like, is it me or is it him?
We're going to be talking about the closure of Lionhead Studios. They were the creators of the Fable series. And I believe at one point Peter Molyneux also worked at Lionhead Studios with Fable 1 and 2.
He founded it, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
also with Black and White.
Yeah, Black and
Yeah.
White was also their games.
Now, I never actually played Black and White, but who here has actually played, either the Fable games or Black and White? And
I've played
what did
I
you...
both.
did.
Yeah, and what did you
Fables.
think of it?
I quite liked them.
I mean, what was Black and White actually about, really? Because I've literally never heard of it until a few days ago.
It's sort of like a GOG game mixed with a city builder.
Was
Yeah,
it
sort of.
actually better than Peter Molyneux's failure of a game of that recent God game he made? What, Goddess, that was it. Goddess was a
Sounds
colossal
better.
failure.
A
Way
lot better from what I've seen from Goddess. I think that Black and White really, really was a lot better. It was really fun.
I've never played Goddess, but
I have.
I have played the original Black and White, not the second one. It was a really refreshing thing because it was a completely different strategy game than you're used to, actually. Because
Yeah.
you don't really have that much control over your characters because they're just people. You have to influence them.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
doing
Goddess
godly
did
actions.
do that, actually. And
Oh, it probably would.
the issue with Goddess was the fact it was literally just a straight up mobile port. You could almost see it because
Ah, okay.
you'd tap on everything to get someone to do something, and it was pretty terrible. I did try it out. I actually had it removed from my Steam account. It was that bad.
Wow.
And I've only had to do that with 2 games so far. One of them was H1Z1 and the other one was Goddess. They're that bad.
Well, the thing with Goddess was as well that you had to wait in real time for a lot of shit.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
a
it was
lot of
fucking
mobile games
horrible.
do as well. And they had
Yeah.
microtransactions, I think, at one point.
I'm not
The
sure if they
mobile
had it on
game
the PC.
fighters.
Oh yes, they did. They did the
But
thing
to
that
speed
almost...
everything up.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, that's
well,
definitely a mobile port thing.
Yeah, I mean, they also had, like Mark was saying with the microtransactions, they had them in originally, and their reasoning was to make it fair, because the mobile game has obviously had microtransactions. We didn't. They removed them eventually, though.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Black and White, especially the first one, was a really good game. It was one of my
Power.
favorites, actually.
I've played the
White
second one. I
power.
really, really liked it at that time.
Well, the first
White
one, I
power.
think, is a better game than the second one, because the first one also has a lot of shit like skirmish mode, where you can just select your own thing, while in the
Oh, yeah.
second one, you just have to follow the levels as they were placed for you.
Yeah.
The original Black and White. I don't know if the second one had it, but the first one also had a lot of physics puzzles and all that stuff. So it
Yeah,
was
with
pretty,
rock
pretty
throwing.
cool.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
second
rock
one
throwing
had that as
and,
well.
Placing discs over a few poles to create a temple, stuff like that, and just interesting stuff.
Did any of you ever play the expansion packs on the first
no,
and second one?
Never
No.
did that.
No.
Because the first one had a creature island expansion, which basically, because creatures, we haven't mentioned them yet, but they were also a pretty big part of the game. You just
And
had
what
this
about-
giant creature.
What about
Yeah.
Fable? Because I really enjoyed the original Fable, and actually I made the mistake of buying the Fable Anniversary, which was a
Oh,
reboot
God.
of the original. Yeah, and it was when I played it, I was like, oh, it's gonna have modding support and a whole bunch of things for it. And really, all it was like texture replacement ability and things like that.
Wow.
But
It actually looked worse than the lost
it did.
chapters.
It looked worse. That was the amazing thing about it. It looked worse. Somehow
And
they
it
made the
ran
game
worse.
look worse. Yeah, it did. It ran like absolute arse.
Didn't
But-
it sold very poorly? I think Lionhead Studios was, when they were bought by Microsoft, they were in deep economical troubles because that game didn't sell at all.
That's usually why they get bought up by a different company. Yeah, so it probably is.
Well, I'm surprised it didn't sell well, considering that it was basically a console port. and it would have worked really well on a console. I'm almost certain of it. And for whatever reason, they decided to just copy it straight over to PC as though that would ever work. I mean, the menu system is atrocious. If you want, you can download the game from my library and try it out if you want, guys. But it's so atrociously bad. Like,
I'll just
navigating the
stick to the
menus is so
console
bad.
version of it. I've played
Yeah.
Fable 1, 2, and 3 on console. I'm pretty happy with that.
Fable
Wait,
1
what?
was a great port on PC. Fable 1 worked really well on PC.
But the Fable Anniversary is technically speaking just the first game, but then revamped to be more new.
It's just
next
basically
generation, sort?
it's basically the same as Halo Anniversary.
Well, I think it was like this. The PC version of the first Fable was a console port, which was then ported over to the next-gen consoles from PC, which was then ported back over to PC as the Anniversary Edition.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Because
yeah.
apparently I'm reading here that the Anniversary Edition also came out for 360. So the same game apparently on the PC and 360. But they use Unreal Engine 3, so I would be amazed if they managed to make it look bad.
It looked
User in
pretty
your
bad. I mean, the
channel timed
textures.
out.
Oh well, that buy low spec. The textures, the textures were so bad. Like I'm almost convinced they weren't even 1024-bit. I'm almost convinced. I'm pretty sure they were only like 512.
Really?
Yeah, they were pretty bad. What did you actually think of the original then? So have any of you played all of them like in order? Because I haven't actually played all of them.
played
I've
the
played
first
all
one.
the Fable. Well, I've played all 3 Fable games in order. I really enjoyed it, at least. I mean,
I heard a lot of people said that they didn't like Fable 3. I actually got the game for free on Xbox 360 with the Games with Gold when they were releasing it. There was a free game for the month and you could keep it. I actually enjoyed Fable 3. However,
Yeah, I
at that
did
point,
as
I
well,
hadn't
I
played
mean-
the previous ones. The
I
dog
got
was
it.
a little bit pointless.
I got it because a friend of mine recommended it, but I haven't really played it yet, so I wouldn't know.
Still got it on Steam.
Yeah, I think I've got it on Steam. I
Wow.
don't know.
Do you want to know? That game is impossible to buy anymore on PC.
Let's see. Fable 3. No, apparently I don't have it on Steam.
You can't
Well,
buy it anymore. They ran out of keys.
Probably got a physical copy then.
They actually ran out of keys for that game.
But I do have Fable
How the
Lost
hell is that
Answers,
possible?
apparently.
Yep, they cannot. In fact, people were buying them and they couldn't give the game to people because, like, literally, they didn't have any more keys to give out.
How do you run out of keys for a game like that? I
yeah,
mean,
you really need to have a crappy key generator then.
yeah,
well,
that's
The way I figured was that
User entered your channel.
with the prior games, they didn't expect them to do as well.
oh, this is really fucking terrible. Yeah, apparently they ran out pretty fucking soon, actually.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They ran out of keys for Fable 3, which I found amazing. I thought you could just generate more. I didn't think you'd actually have to.
Well, you can
Put them in.
That's the thing. There's got to be some flaw in their key generation system that they couldn't generate more keys, or they just made a really crappy key system that
'Cause-
didn't allow for a lot of keys.
Technically, you should be able to generate more keys than there are people on the Earth. Like, they should have no issue with that.
Yeah, technically speaking, not.
Yeah.
It just depends on how long you make your initial key, because if as soon as you set the key length, you cannot change it afterwards, because you'll invalidate the original keys.
Now, what was really interesting with Fable, now I also somewhat believe that they were not only creating games that weren't all that popular, however, I believe they should have been, because the humor in them was very much a British humor,
Mhm.
However, I think that they were perhaps spending too much money and not making enough profit. Over all 3 Fable games, this is all 3 of them, they made only $7 million. Now, that is a lot of money. However, if you compare that to something like Witcher, the Witcher franchise, from Witcher 1, 2, and 3, Witcher made over $25 million.
Now we're talking about actual profits here, not just
Actual profits, not just
so
the
after
amount. Yeah.
after
tax.
After
deducting-
cost reduction and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
after
cost
tax, after cost reduction, etc. After paying everyone, that's 25 million. That is over 3 times as many.
Yeah, but I mean,
I have to say though, do you know how old the original Fable game is? They're not really that representative of a good game anymore, because the amount of money that's going into gaming is it's rising every single year.
Well, If
So,
in fact,
it's-
counting for inflation, Mogan, games are pretty much the same price as they were 20 years ago.
Yeah, but more people buy them now than they were
More
20
people
years
buy
ago.
them
that's what
now,
I mean.
true. And also, there's digital distribution, so distribution is basically
Yeah, a lot of
like,
people
nothing.
can more easily
negligible.
get them.
Yeah. And I mean, you got different distribution sites, good old games, Steam, Origin,
Pirate Bay.
Uplay, and obviously physical storefronts. But
Are you getting a slight aneurysm every time you say one
yeah,
of those?
sorry, I was having a bit of a stroke.
Yeah.
Uplay.
Nobody mentioned Windows Store, or else you will die.
Oh yeah, no. Oh god.
We would
Oh,
like to
God.
forget that
I
one.
just swallowed something.
And the Google Play Store.
Oh,
God.
By the way,
wait,
I just
that's on
looked up,
PC. No, it isn't. Is it?
I looked up a
I
key.
think you can via Chrome.
Like
Looked up
I
a key,
just-
yeah.
yeah, I looked up a serial key for Fable 3, and apparently it's using numerically only keys that are 5 sets of 5 characters. So if they ran out, they really
That's
would've
impossible to
fucked up.
run out. Isn't
It's
it?
like, yeah, that's literally
That's over a
impossible.
quadrillion combinations. That's like
Yeah.
every person on Earth owning several thousand copies of the game.
How the hell did they run out of that?
So yeah.
No, there's definitely a flaw in the system that they use to produce the keys. It's
That
not the
or-
first time that it happens. A few months ago, there was a big buzz because Steam had run out of GTA 4 keys. Granted, that is an old game, but it's the
Jesus
same.
Christ, didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, that's because I had not played GTA 4 before, and I bought it like a couple of months before, and I tried to play it, but it will not let me. It will tell me my key was invalid.
Well, I just calculated. Apparently, it's 1 quadrillion keys.
Yeah,
like I said.
that's what I mean. There's more than enough to like
Yeah, that's.
port the moon and the Earth and fucking Jupiter.
I mean,
that's
obviously
more
they
than all
don't
the
want.
people that have ever lived in the existence of mankind.
yeah,
but
exactly.
I mean, probably they didn't want the keys to be like 00001, 0002.
yeah.
Yeah,
That
probably,
would probably
because
be easy to crack. So they
you know
had
what
some
the
kind of
stupid
it.
thing is? It actually accepts anything apparently. Because the key that I've got here is just literally 1111111111111111111. It's just all ones.
25 ones. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, 25 ones. That's it. Apparently that works.
Wouldn't that also be then 10 quadrillion keys if you start with 000 and go to 99999?
I'm just gonna test it and we'll install it for a test.
I think the worst part of the closure of Lionhead Studios was the way it was handled, and I've seen this before with big companies. I've spoken to people who have worked at companies where there'll be rumors of the closure of the company, and they'll go to their boss and they'll say, are these rumors true? I keep hearing about them. They'll be, no, it's not true. It's fine. Just keep working. But they are true. And the idea is, you want to keep people working as long as possible, keep them as productive as possible. However, doing that practice means that it stops people from finding new jobs, and they find themselves jobless, and they've got to try as hard as possible to find a new one. Whereas if you tell people early, they have a chance to look for new work.
Yeah, well, the problem is probably that the people who are communicating with them are just a few layers below the people who actually make the decision to just kill the entire studio. Because it's probably the people up top that say, well, this budget supports, well, that's crap, let's cut that studio, just fucking shut it down. It's probably just a really simple decision for them on, really up high. And
Well,
managers that actually have to communicate with the people who work at the studio, they're a few layers down, so they don't hear of the decision really,
Until it's too late,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, I've seen it frequently where big companies especially will be like, oh, this idea arbitrarily is not profitable. And,
Yeah, just cut it
they'll...
out.
Yeah,
Doesn't
they'll
just
randomly
happen
cut it
in
out.
companies.
It's
trust
not
me.
like let's phase this out. No, it's like, oh, cut it out. Just cut
Yeah,
the
well,
costs
it was the same
immediately.
with, Microsoft. They bought out, I think it was called Banjo-Kazooie, right? They bought
yeah,
it.
Rare.
I was about to mention.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they bought it,
Rare.
and
What
then
does
they
it
just sort of locked it away in their cellar of IPs they're never going to fucking use. Yet they say it
they
isn't
didn't.
profitable.
They
Yeah,
did.
they
They
have-
did not.
They haven't done fuck with it, have they?
They made a game after
I
that,
bet it was
but
shit.
they've
Bet it was shit.
completely fucked it up.
Yeah, they of
Quote
course
unquote
did.
game.
But
Yeah, quote unquote game nuts and
then-
bolts. Fuck that.
and then like a year ago, some indie developers basically made the same thing, obviously using different characters, and it's like a success on Kickstarter. It earned like millions to the Kickstarter campaign, and they're about to release it sometime this year.
It is a good
it's
thing.
it's like so profitable, yet these companies won't touch them because the money in their eyes just isn't enough. Arbitrarily, it's just not a good idea for some reason.
It's
Yeah.
good that you mentioned Rare, because that's the other big company that was bought by Microsoft. And something very important that happened with Rare is that they handled that so wrong that all the talent that had made Rare a good company and all the Banjo-Kazooie team left the company. And in fact, those are the people who actually did the Kickstarter for Yooka-Laylee, which is
Okay.
the sort of a spiritual successor to Banjo-Kazooie, which is a nice way of saying it's the same game, it's just different characters because, Microsoft owns the original ones. But you look at the gameplay and the design, and you read like the bios of the team, and it's the same damn people. It's so when I think about Rare and the way Microsoft sort of destroyed that company, and now I read this news, I do wonder if there's something internal to the process of Microsoft that is like drawing away all the people who actually made this company successful.
Well, I can tell it from personal experience because I did at one point, work under companies like EA Nordic specifically, and that was in drop my mic. EA Nordic specifically, we would, I'd be set on this project, and I'd work at it for months, and then arbitrarily they'd be like, "Oh no, that's not a good idea, cut it." Or the discussions that you'd have in meetings be that essentially the idea of this is it's a product, it's a launching platform in which to sell DLC and sell content. The game itself doesn't matter. The idea is you're trying to farm out, do as little work and as cheap work as possible in order to sell copies of DLC. That was what the company was and is still about. I mean, Mogan made the point himself when he played Need for Speed Most Wanted, because it was free on Origin, was that he'd drive up to a vehicle and it would just be it would still be in the game. It would just be locked behind a paywall.
Yeah, it's just a lot of vehicles are in there, even though they're actually DLC. So it's definitely a platform for selling stuff a lot, at least for EA games. That's becoming a really annoying trend lately. Because
Criterion Games, I think they died, didn't they?
Technically speaking, no.
I haven't
Because
seen anything from them for years.
They haven't really done any major development. They've just been a lot of co-development, because they did co-development on Hardline and Battlefront for Star Wars, the new one. And they did a Burnout clone that was called Need for Speed Most Wanted in 2012. It's the rehash. That's the one I was talking about. That's for free.
I don't know why
a few
they
months
didn't.
ago.
I don't know why they didn't continue the Burnout franchise, because Burnout is just brilliant in my opinion.
Yeah, it's one of the better games that I've played.
It was fun, yeah.
I think the most interesting thing about Burnout, at least what made it so cool, was the
Drifting.
fact that it was really about the gameplay, and you didn't have any numbers on your screen. It's just like, oh, it's this bar, and it's just arbitrary value, and you don't actually see how fast you're going. You just know you're going fast.
Well, EA is very good at buying up companies and then just completely ripping their arms off and killing them. I mean, we've seen it with Maxis. We've seen it with Westwood.
Yeah.
Who are the developers of Dungeon Keeper again? I've forgotten the names now. Bullfrog. Fucking hell. They've killed so many companies. It's amazing how they still do business. Because I wouldn't do business with them. If EA came up to me and said, "We'd like to buy your company," it's almost like them grabbing a kitten and just killing it,
Yeah, but the
Well,
idea is the
but
people that work at those companies that are being eaten by EA will still work at EA. They just, get.
I know, but their company's no more. They're just faceless. They're nothing
Yeah, the
anymore.
companies are gone, but the people aren't. The talent is still there.
problem
They just send
usually
it
is
on
that-
other games.
A company doesn't end up being an EA company unless it's got some trouble, because usually these companies are in financial trouble because they're not selling enough to actually be profitable on their development cycles.
And that's
That's
why
usually what
other
happens.
companies buy them up.
Well,
That's
a
why
lot of
EA
these
buys them up for like fucking dirt cheap.
I know, but it's like Maxis would have been very profitable, and I'm sure if EA had left them to do their own thing, SimCity wouldn't have been a disaster. I mean, SimCity itself would have been a great game.
definitely.
I mean, what was wrong with SimCity? I mean, they could have rehashed it, upped the graphics, made some new mechanics. It would have been great, but then they added, this online thing that just had to be there for the core of the game to work. Yet
Even
a
though it was a
modder,
single player game,
yeah, and yet a modder within like the first 2 weeks figured out how to turn it offline. I mean, it's not actually Maxis. Like Maxis said that it needed to be in there. They're being told by EA they have to say these things because EA doesn't want to be seen as the evil one, Yet,
Yeah.
in the background, they're the ones pulling the strings. They're the ones saying, you have to say this.
Well, yeah, obviously because EA isn't really a developer; they're a publisher, so they specialize in telling other companies what to do and telling the public about these games in ways that will actually make people buy games.
Yeah,
So
well,
they're really good at hyping up stuff and telling people how it's supposed to be. Oh, we can't do that because because of this arbitrary reason that doesn't make any fucking sense if you know anything about computers.
yeah, well, I did love
Every
how
company does that anyway.
I did love how
Yeah.
passive aggressive EA got when they were voted the worst company 2 years in a row in America.
I thought it was more than 2 years, but yeah,
I'm
they've been
pretty
kicked
pretty
off
sure
the
it was 2
throne
years in
for
a
a
row.
while now.
Sadly, yeah, I don't know who's got it now, but they were voted the worst company. Yet I don't know if it was sheer naivety or just wanting to pretend as though they didn't know. They actually blamed it due to people not liking their inclusion of other sexualities, in things like Mass Effect where you could be gay or women are in their games, whereas it obviously wasn't. It was obviously due to their business practices and nobody liking it.
Well, some
Apparently
clever PR
Comcast.
person was doing damage control.
Yeah, apparently
Yeah.
Comcast is now the worst company in the US.
Comcast, well, I can fucking agree with that. Yeah,
That's not a very hard.
Comcast
Yeah.
is awful.
Well, apparently they said that they didn't want to win it for a third time, which is frankly it's interesting to see because they didn't give a shit about it the first 2 times, but apparently when the third time came around that they possibly could win it,
Well,
they
bad
said they didn't
PR.
want to. But no, that's the thing. They don't give a shit because it's not bad PR. The
Well-
only people who care about this kind of PR are not the people who buy a lot of games from them.
No,
The people who buy a lot of games from EA don't give a shit about the worst company award. They don't
in fact,
care.
they were they were bragging about how many concurrent users they had on Origin. Well, concurrent users doesn't mean happy customers. It doesn't. Because
it
if you
means
go on
people you force to log in to play
Yes.
their games that isn't even online.
Yes, exactly. But none of these games on here have I paid a single dollar towards. They're all free games that I got on a free month. That's it. So
Well, Titanfall was never free, so you got that probably from somewhere. But
no, it's a Origin game time. It's like where you can test the game out. I haven't started it yet because I can't be asked.
okay,
But this is what I mean. Nobody really goes on Origin and buys shit because not only is the layout fucking atrocious, but the games are just not that great. I mean, what have they got that Steam hasn't got? I mean, Need for Speed and
they've got like
Customer
1 or 2
support.
games. Yeah, they've got
Battlefield?
2 games, I think. No, what's 1 game? I've got 1 game that I cannot play on Steam, so I play it on Origin. Mass
and
Effect.
which game's that?
Mass
Mass Effect
Effect
3, there you go.
yeah.
Morgan, if you think about it, it's not because you like Origin, it's because you have
No.
to. Exactly.
It's
That's not how you get
I only have an
customers.
Origin account literally because I have Mass Effect, and the other 20 games that are in there are Humble Bundle keys that I have left over and free months games. That's the only
Yeah,
thing.
that's what I mean. It's not because it's a good service. It's because they're forcing you there. It's like the Windows 10 store. It's not because anyone likes it. It's because they're gating content behind walls. That's not how you garner customer satisfaction. That's not how you do it. You want to get customers there by making them want to be there, not be
Yeah.
forced to be there. Going back to Fable, not quite sure what would happen after you get your company's gone under like that, and how difficult it would be to find a new job, because obviously you're without a job at this point and you've got to find some work quickly, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to pay your bills. You're cutting into your savings. It's quite difficult.
I guess it really depends on how they are structured. I mean, if they're working for the holding, then they should still have a job because,
Well,
the
I'm
company
sure
they worked at is gone. The actual job is still there.
Well, not really. They
And
found
if
out.
they only worked for Lionhead itself, then yeah, they're fucked.
Well, they only found out that Lionhead Studios was closing the same time the public found out. They found out on the day that it was closing that everyone else found out it was closing, which is just terrible.
Well, the question is, I don't know if this is actually available. Did they get any form of severance? Because that's usually what happens.
You know, I would imagine so, because that would be in the terms and conditions of the job, I would imagine.
Well, that's the problem. A lot of jobs don't do that because it's not actually something that's mandatory to put in the contract. At least in most countries, it isn't.
Well, okay, the company where I am from, it generally is required.
Yeah, but in a lot of countries, it's not required. So if they don't have to, they might not do it.
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, these are all details, you know, that are sort of hidden away to the people working there. But, you know, it's another company that's going to be closed. And I think you know, you start hearing about this more and more. And I think it's honestly because the market for video games has become so full of stuff. You know, like literally there's anything you could imagine on the internet, you know?
Well, yeah, that's the
Simulator.
difference now, isn't it? Because it used to be that there were a lot of games that you didn't actually have to pay for, and a lot of games that were just really cheap and crap. Right? The same fucking situation as right now, but the difference is that it's more accessible now. So the market that's actually visible to the average user is getting larger and larger. Because I remember back in, I think this was like 2001, 2002, I was downloading a lot of free-to-play games because there were a shit ton of free-to-play games back then. They just weren't as easy to find.
Yeah.
That's probably the problem right now, that the market is just so easy to access. There's so much shit going on competing for the average, you know, consumer's money. It's, well, you've only got about this amount of money to spend on games, or this amount of games that I want to buy, and there's so many games to choose from. Then yeah, obviously you're going to be limited in how much money you can make on a game nowadays.
I know, but what I hate the most is I think the idea that, you know, video games are a platform for selling shit, you know, because the consumer only has so much money. So when you're trying to milk it out of the consumer by removing content and selling it later, or doing what Mass Effect 3 did, which was literally selling on disc DLC that was on the disc or in the game when you bought it.
Was that the From Ashes one?
That was the From Ashes DLC.
Yeah, with the Prothean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was literally in the game when it released, so it was really removed from the game, and pretty important DLC as well. You know, meeting a Prothean is pretty important. And then just removing it and selling it later, you know, it's a pretty important part of the DLC.
Yeah,
but isn't that with all pre-order bonuses though? I mean, they're shipping with the game.
Well,
yeah,
not
available to everyone.
Most of them are just things like skins or just new guns, like pointless shit.
Yeah, but not actual parts of the game that you cannot play unless you know, pay for it. Cosmetic things aren't usually that big of a deal because it's usually just, oh, it's nice to have this, but it doesn't really take away from the game if you don't have it.
Yeah,
but there are like level packs and shit that are also locked off.
Well, I know, but if you think about it, level packs are generally things like multiplayer, and really, when it comes to packs like that, not everyone buys them, and so there's generally less people playing them online. So
yeah, but they're just literally cutting stuff from a game they shipped just to give it back to you if you pre-order.
Yeah, if you have something that you have on day one and it's ready on day one, it should be in the game.
Yeah, it should. It really should. But
yeah,
like I think Total Biscuit was talking about the subject where the art team are literally not doing anything a few months into development. Like literally they've drawn the characters, they've done all the texture work, there's nothing for them to do. I still believe that DLC that is fully written out, voice acted, has level design, and has missions, you know, like the Prothean DLC or several other things that release on day one, should be there.
A game that simply, it's a big... because there are also a lot of games who are being released in unfinished states with full price points. I think a good example of that happening right now was Battlefront, which I To my full disgrace, I actually bought that game because I liked Star Wars, and I have never regretted the decision so much in my life. Particularly because the game has like 4 maps. It's worse than an early access game, but that's a $60 game.
Can you remember the conversation me and you had, Dash Cat? I think it was like months before Battlefront actually released, and me and you both said, "Oh God, EA's bought it. It's going to be terrible." Do you remember that?
Well, I think
Not sure, but
The last
The
Battlefront
second-
wasn't under EA. It was still
wasn't
under
under EA.
LucasArts.
Yeah, it was LucasArts that actually did that.
okay. So the last one that then was literally
Different
also
company,
the
yeah.
last one that we're ever gonna play probably, but
Yeah,
I mean,
because
I love Battlefield 2. Battlefield 2, Battlefront
you
2,
mean.
Battlefront 2 is amazing. But the newest one, I was never going to buy it. I'm probably not going to buy it unless it drops down to the actual price it's worth, which is like maybe 20 euros.
Yes, that's
If that.
exactly what happens. Because of course, when you look at the lack of content of the game, you can say, "Oh, all right, they can add maps and modes and ships, whatever,
But it's
further
DLC.
along as
I bet it's
DLC."
DLC.
I wouldn't
Yep.
mind that if the base game was like $20, but I paid $60 for this game, and I'm so angry about the lack of content that I'm never going to spend a single cent on DLC because I shouldn't be spending that amount of money just to get a basic game.
I'm so sick of developers not like looking at something that's popular and emulating it, but not knowing why it's popular. You know, they see something, it's popular. Okay, episodic games, they're popular. Telltale Games is doing this, it's popular. But they fail
Yeah.
to see why it's popular.
But it's
Yeah,
simply
it's-
something
it's-
that was tacked on later on. I mean, if you have a publishing, an idea of how you're going to publish your game must be built around that idea. And my concern with Hitman is that it looks like it was a full game, and at some point they decided to chop it off into pieces. And that's not how it
Exactly.
works.
If from the very beginning you do the idea as episodic, cool. If you can do it properly, brilliant. But if you make a game with the express purpose of selling a full game and then cut it up at the end, that's not good. It looks like Lionhead have always been with EA, like from very beginning
Yeah,
with
I know.
Black and White.
it's one of the only studios that actually were always in EA. They weren't destroyed by it,
Were they in EA? I thought they were on Microsoft.
were they?
The
yeah,
publisher
Microsoft
was EA
Studios in
Games.
2006.
Yeah,
But they were bought up
then.
at some point by Microsoft, but they were originally.
They were
always on EA.
originally
Oh,
from
yeah.
Electronic Arts, yeah.
for a really
Yeah.
long time.
Well, it's
I
Peter
think
Molyneux's spin-off
they
of-
mostly bought it up for the Fable games because Fable was a really popular game on the Xbox.
Game
Probably
it,
one of the reasons they bought it up.
Game it didn't
Oh,
last because I actually rather enjoyed Fable personally.
I've
I would
never
have
played
loved
it.
I would have loved the Black and White 3.
Yeah.
I'll show you something black and white.
I'm
Wow.
not a bird poop. I don't know.
Black and white. What did they
I
actually
mean-
release that wasn't a Peter Molyneux project? Because that's the big gripe that
You know-
I had with it. Because Peter Molyneux was hailed as this saint, this legend of
No,
the video
he
game
was
designer,
a
and he made so
terrible
much shit.
liar. He was a terrible liar as well.
Well, he was a great salesman, basically.
least in
which also
recent
makes him a
years.
terrible liar.
Oh, you mean all the shit that he was promising about the Fable games? Oh, it's gonna have this, and it's gonna be awesome, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
but
he
every
only
game
had
he
like
ever made.
10% of what he promised.
It's
Yeah.
also like Jim Sterling has said, it's called the Molyneux cycle. What he does is he starts off hyping up a game, saying how good it is, releases it, and then the next game he talks about how good it is, and then says the last game was shit in comparison and it was crap, and then says this new game's amazing. And it just keeps doing that. The
Yeah.
Molyneux cycle. Hey, Low Spec, be happy because Battlefield Hardline has a new DLC. Yay!
That makes me so happy.
I could not hear just maybe a little tiny hint of sarcasm there,
You know
but
what?
not a lot.
You know what? The DLC is ironically called Betrayal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's just how could they have picked a better name?
Wow.
What does it involve? Paying off the opposing cops with extra paid DLC?
uh,
I haven't
What
got
is
any
it?
money to pay you, but I've got Steam keys.
oh, here we go. It's $11.99, and it is what does it add? It adds 4 new maps, 2 new vehicles, and 7 new weapons.
Oh, well, I'm already impressed.
Oh yeah, a whole 12 euros
Yeah.
for that.
Any final words for Lionhead Studios?
I
Rest in
think-
pesos.
I think we'll see something from the Lionhead guys at some point. Either they'll go off and they'll start their own indie production, as several other developers have, like Rare, the people from Rare have, or we'll see them join some other big company. Maybe they'll get eaten up by EA or Ubisoft or someone.
Might be
I
that
mean,
they
final
just join
words?
another team on EA and that they continue making some other good games, hopefully.
Yeah,
I-
I mean,
I do hope they end up making their own company, and I look forward for the Fable spiritual successor on Kickstarter. to
you
say.
look forward to making their games look like crap, don't you?
I do. I always do.
I also have some final advice for Lionhead. Just
Well,
don't
that's
give
it.
a lion head.